Meetings go way back to pizza parlors, chatting about GIS over some dinner, and so we've kind of now morphed these into this latest series.
Welcome to the latest in our series, Conversations with NorthStateGIS, and I'm pleased to welcome An-Min Wu to our conversation this evening. And An-Min is an assistant professor in the Spatial Sciences program at the University of Southern California. So welcome, An-Min.
Nice to be here, Dan. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so why don't we start off by having you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into GIS?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Nice to be here. My name is An-Min Wu. I'm assistant professor at Spatial Science Institute at the University of Southern California, USC here in Southern California. So for GIS, I came to the United States for my master's in environmental pollution control more than 20 years ago at the Penn State University. So I did not know anything about GIS that time. But when I applied for funding, I got into a teaching assistant position for a environmental GIS course. So I was learning GIS at the same time while assisting others in the computer labs. And that's how I started doing GIS. I was lucky that my then advisor, Dr. Gary Pearson, he was one of the pioneers, which I heard along with the now S3 CEO, Jack Dangerman at that time in this field doing GIS in the environmental research. And so I have been since then using GIS extensively for my research, right? And then after my master, I worked in a consumer navigation company, Thales Navigation is now Magellan, for a GIS analyst position. And so, I have been both in the private industry, but also back into the research right now. So yeah, it's how I got into GIS, and it's very interesting, always moving, right? So that's a nice thing I continue working on.
Can you identify a couple of the key events or decisions that led to you getting your position at USC?
Okay, so key events. So there's a lot of key events I want to say, because you continue knowing more people, and this community is always great. It's very inclusive compared to other fields that I know. So if we talk about key events, after I finished my postdoc with US Forest Services, at the time I've already moved to Los Angeles. So I have decided to join different geography listserv to look for opportunities, right? So I found out this annual Los Angeles Geospatial Summit. It's a whole day conference hosted by USC Spatial Science Institute, where I work right now. So I just decided to attend the event, talk to some people over there, and a couple of faculty I talked to introduced me to our director, Dr. John Wilson, right? So, and not only that, but because Dr. Wilson, I know him from my research long before the event, and he has collaborated with my master's advisor, Dr. Gary Pearson at Penn State, and wrote some book with my PhD co-advisor at the University of Minnesota. So it helped me to kind of get that trust, right, from my current supervisor, Dr. Wilson, that, okay, my background would be solid in GIS. So I got an interview that summer. So the conference was in February, and I got an interview in the summer, and I was hired in the fall 2016 to teach at the USC since then. So I think really I will say from my experience, the networking events sometimes appear superficial at the time, or maybe just for fun, but I think the real networking happens after you work hard in the field for many years and you start knowing some people and people know people. So that really helped me throughout the time that when I don't even think about it.
That's is really insightful, I think, especially in light of the fact that so much of the opportunities that present themselves to us come as a result of people that we've met that are in the field, people that we encounter at conferences and workshops and things like that. It's probably worth mentioning that you and I met as a result of being on the education working group of the California GIS Council, which is an ongoing enterprise. So another contact, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So tell us a little bit about the degree offerings in terms of GIS and geospatial at USC, and a little bit about the Spatial Sciences Institute.
Yeah, sure. So Spatial Science Institute at USC are like the go-to GIS place on our campus, right? So we offer many programs from undergrad to master's to PhD, and also graduate certificate involved with spatial sciences. So I don't know if I should start with undergrad or graduate, but our main undergrad program is called geodesign. So if you're not familiar with the term, think about engaging geospatial thinking, community, and data science skills into planning and design. And another program that we have is a human security and geospatial intelligence. So we also offer several minors to train students applying the geospatial skill into their own focuses. So such as the spatial studies or sustainability science and human security and geospatial intelligence. We have master's program, both online and residential, for the online program called GIST, also with the human security and geospatial intelligence. And we have a residential program in spatial economic and data analysis and the spatial data science. And PhD program is more of interdisciplinary. It's called Population, Health, and Place, where we see the research being in this intersection with space, place, and public health, and either demography or sociology are very important and trend moving into how we understand human life and well-being.
That's fascinating. You know, a couple of things struck me when you were saying that. One is how each university and probably each community college, for that matter, is sort of grappling with how best to address this very kind of broad and deep subject matter that we sort of loosely describe as geospatial. And you know, it really speaks to that breadth, just what you were describing in terms of the different pathways just within your institution that people can go around what's happening with GIS and geospatial.
Yeah, and surely, so that's why our faculty also come from all sorts of different backgrounds, right? So my background is in more of a soil, water, and climate, but then we have other from political science, geography, computer science. So really very broad, and how we really serve better for the community is, like you say, a lot of thinking into it.
So how do you connect with the wider GIS community, including potential employers for your graduates?
So as you say, like we actually know each other from the education work group of California GIS Council, right? So really for me, the wider GIS community is I enjoy knowing people from different background, different location, you know, like a different setting. I started join California Geographic Information Association, the CGIA first. I was board member and then becoming chair in 2019. And I'm still involved with that. So from there, I start knowing people from private sector, from local or regional or state government. And that helped me to get into knowing more people and be involved with the California GIS Council. Right. So in that sense, that's one way I see, you know, I stay involved and knowing what's going on in terms of different sectors. On the other hand, like I always get questions from my students about job opportunities. And at the same time, the getting involved with, going to conferences, for example, is also very important to me. And I usually like to talk to random people when I like standing in front of the job board, or waiting for coffee at the, for example, S3 user conference, right, when we are in person, for sure. So that's always kind of nice to start meeting more people. And I even have helped I don't know who I help, right? Because I'm helping people to find a good graduates, but I'm also getting my good student to find an employee like opportunity. So that's when I meet people, and then they will talk to me about the trend. That's what I learned about the trend. But I also, if they're looking for the students for internship, or the people who like looking for some the full-time employment, I will definitely go back. And I think it's important to recommend good students for the people who are looking for a good hire. So that's been what I am enjoying myself doing throughout time, even that's I'm just kind of middle person.
What are some of the things that you do to stay on top of this rapidly changing field, and what geospatial trends are you finding particularly interesting at the moment?
As I mentioned, I join conferences regularly, and that will be like either particularly on GIS or more in education or in research. And I also join, like we mentioned, about CGIA or GIS Council, or even like ERISA, different GIS groups, meeting people to know what's going on in the businesses. But then to stay up, then if you see the trend, there's so much out there we can learn now online. And so if you see things are moving and going that you're interested, for myself, I started learning that even sometimes throughout the education online platforms such as Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, things like that. There's always training out there, then you just kind of go look for it. And yeah, sometimes for sort of like open source, that's since it's open source, people are also willing to share. So there's a lot of online resources that I will try to learn little by little. And I think this is ongoing process, so I'm still learning from doing that. So for the trend, I think so. I think there's a couple of them I'm seeing, and one is that I mentioned about like open source, or actually more of maybe type of data science. That kind of skill set seem to be emergent and always needed in different businesses, right? And I teach a course, spatial econometrics. So I'm seeing a lot of need in terms of our economics and finance sectors having to use, or just regular businesses having like a marketing using geospatial applications to better operate their work, like supply chains, things like this. So I think there's this technology kind of trend, like learning more on the data science. And then there's also like into what businesses that we can look for. The other thing I'm seeing is maybe like more on like related to what we're going through now in the pandemic, like public health, right? So spatial sciences right now, like you can see, can help a lot in terms on the how we understand our like a disease, how we help integrating, or how we get all this distribution, prediction, and forecast on the pattern and understanding the processes underlying. So I think that's another trend I'm seeing a good to we actually have worked with our medical school, which is the program I didn't mention about. It's a MPH, the Master of Public Health in GeoHealth track. So that's another trend that we're seeing, maybe using GIS or geospatial sciences that we can help the public health to better this world.
Thank you. That's helpful. You use the term data science, and I was reminded of talking to another colleague who actually has a staff of 8 or 10 people that are doing primarily GIS work, but he moved towards changing their job titles to data scientist, in part because he felt like it was more universal for them, that they didn't feel quite as hemmed in. But I'm wondering if you might just elaborate a little bit. I mean, we teach a class in data design and capture. So, we're getting down into sort of database design. And of course, there's a lot of data integration questions where you've got, how do you work with and integrate these data sets that are in disparate formats? How do you work with data being captured by different sensors and so forth? Are there other elements to data science that the audience might be interested in hearing about?
Yeah, so you mentioned about data science, like you mentioned, I kind of smile because I don't think it's a new field, right? And it's a new term. There's a lot of work that we have been doing before that's actually today become data science. So you mentioned that your friend has changing the title of their employee into data science position, and I think it's like the field is constant moving, but also sometimes the terminology. We have done databases, we have done data wrangling, data and engineering. So those are sort of part of today's data science. Another perspective might be more in terms of, I'm thinking on the modeling side, right? Because there's a lot of spatial statistics or machine learning kind of skill that you can use to handle the more real-time or big data sets. And that's, I think, also a big part of data science that people are really looking for, having the GIS professional or computer science folks that has this type of skill set to help. It could be in the government setting, it could be in the private sectors, or even research in academia.
So what suggestions do you have for early career GIS professionals in terms of how they can help to develop or advance their career? I know we've talked about, professional organizations and conferences. Any additional things that you suggest?
Yeah, I think along that line, right? I love how energetic the young people are. So in one way I see, from my experience and talking to other GIS professionals, is that just trying to do more and be willing to work on different type of projects, right? So you can grow and have that kind of experience. Let's say if you are still in school, it might be good to find an internship or work with a professor in research project that you are interested in, right? If you're depending on where you are or what you're doing, you can volunteer yourself for some pro bono work for nonprofit organizations, right? So I think people in different organizations start to realizing the power of GIS. But if they don't, then you can show them that you can utilize the data and help them to solve their problems, right? So yeah, besides that, I think what you say, Dan, more involved in different professional organizations. And that could be GIS, but could also be something on the specific discipline that you're in for, maybe environmental consulting or architecture. or community-based organization, for example, right? Just getting to know people, and if you see someone you admire about their work, ask them how they get there, and maybe you can find some mentors. And that's always helpful in the career development, I think.
I think those are really good suggestions. I think, carrying that curiosity, that willingness to learn new things, that openness to, pushing yourself a little bit, right? I mean, I think advancing kind of requires that, right? We need to always be kind of out on that edge of our comfort zone a little bit. And I think a lot of us have had that circumstance where, you work in an organization thinking that you're going to ask the supervisor how to get around problems, and then at some point there's nobody to ask, and you just have to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, and especially on GIS type of project, you really need to get your hand dirty, and you learn by doing it, right? Sometimes you, like, I even that I say the concept and fundamental knowledge are important. Really only when you have the problem in front of you and you need to use GIS to solve it, and you know how to do it well.
Yes, well said. So a last question. Do you have any advice for students or others that are new to GIS, as people are just starting to get their feet wet?
Well, I guess I have some, it's almost like similar to my suggestion earlier. I think maybe it's nice to ask someone who is already doing GIS for how they start, how they start learning, and how do you involved in the project that you're interested in. I think most of, like, if you're a student, and then schools always have some GIS courses that you may want to take, but also, like I mentioned, involving and doing for a certain project, right, that you're interested in, you're passionate about, will always help you in learning. Just don't be afraid. I think you can always learn that. I like I said, we always have students from very diverse background, and different age, they are in different geographic locations, and really you just have to know you can learn it. You have to keep yourself interested in the work, and that's my advice. And if you have any questions and you think I can help, I'm always, happy to talk to anyone.
Well, that's very, very generous of you to offer, and I appreciate you taking the time today. This has been a useful chat and a nice addition to our conversations with North State GIS. So thank you, An-Min.
Oh, thank you so much, Dan. I'm so happy and honored to be here.
I'm Dan Scollon, and I'm the coordinator and instructor for the Geography and Geospatial program at Shasta College. And join us for our series. You can get more details at northstategis.org.